The mysterious signal. The Galactic Union's High Council chamber was silent. A rare silence, the kind that only came when something truly unexpected had happened. Grand Strategist Velrax, a towering reptilian from the Zorath species, leaned forward, his golden eyes locked on the glowing transmission that floated in the center of the room. Every council member, from the wise and ancient Sci-Fi to the war-hardened generals of the Thalaxin, stared at the same message. It was a signal, a simple transmission sent across deep space, but it was unlike anything they had ever received before. For centuries, the Galactic Union had washed over the known galaxy, bringing order, sometimes through diplomacy, sometimes through war. And now they had intercepted a message from an unknown species, a species from a backwater world, barely known to the Union. The message had been sent from Sol 3, a planet known to its inhabitants as Earth, a signal like no other. Technicians worked furiously, running scans and decrypting the message. The initial assumption was that it was a distress call. That was what most young, developing species did when they encountered the unstoppable force of war. And why wouldn't they? The Dominion, the most ruthless conquerors in the galaxy, had begun their invasion of the Sol system. No species had ever survived a Dominion invasion. The logical outcome was simple. Earth should be screaming for help, begging for mercy. But that was not what the message said. The voice was clear, confident. There was no fear in the tone, no desperation, only defiance. To those who threaten us, we have heard your demands. We understand your power. We know what you have done to others before us. But listen well, for we are not like the others. You will not find weaklings here. You will not find cowards. You will find fighters, survivors. We are humanity. And if you come for us, we will show you why that was your greatest mistake. Silence filled the chamber again. For the first time in his long life, Velrax felt something unusual. Uncertainty. The Zorath strategist had seen countless species fall before the Dominion. He had studied their transmissions, their desperate pleas for salvation. But this was something else. This was not a plea. This was a warning. Doubt and fear. A sharp voice cut through the silence. This is madness, scoffed Counselor Selvar, a tall insectoid being from the Carax race. They are primitive. Their technology is centuries behind the Dominion. They cannot win this war. And yet, murmured Supreme Chancellor Orvek, a wise, elderly being with skin like shimmering silver. His glowing eyes reflected the words of the transmission. They do not sound afraid. A younger counselor, a feline like Silari, shifted nervously. What if it's a bluff? A desperate attempt to seem stronger than they are. Velrax shook his head slowly. I have studied war for over 300 years. I have seen the broken voices of doomed species. I know the sound of desperation. He pointed to the message. That is not desperation. A dangerous enemy. For a long time, the Galactic Union had watched humanity from afar, considering them too small, too divided to be of importance. But the Dominion did not care for such assessments. The Dominion's war fleets had descended upon Sol, expecting an easy conquest. The Galactic Union had already predicted the outcome. Earth's armies would crumble. Their people would surrender. And within weeks, the planet would be under Dominion control. And yet, this transmission suggested something entirely different. Something the Dominion had never encountered before. A species that did not surrender. A species that did not fear them. Velrax exhaled slowly, his claws tapping against the cold metal of the table. If they are speaking the truth, then this war will not end as the Dominion expects. Counselor Excelvar scoffed again. You believe these humans have a chance? No, Velrax admitted. Then, after a pause, he added, but I believe they will make the Dominion bleed for every inch they take, and that changes everything. A war unlike any other. Across the chamber, holoscreens flickered, showing live reports from the Sol system. What they saw only deepened the mystery. Human warships were fighting back. They were outnumbered, outgunned, yet instead of fleeing, they had launched daring counterattacks. They used unpredictable tactics, adapting faster than any species the Union had seen before. Dominion fleets that should have crushed them were reporting heavy casualties. It did not make sense, and yet there was no denying what was happening. This war was not going as planned. The unbreakable spirit. Velrax played the transmission again, listening carefully. The human voice remained calm, unwavering. We are humanity. We do not break. We do not bow. We do not fear. The strategist's scales tingled with an unfamiliar sensation. Not fear, not excitement. Something else. A thought crept into his mind. If humanity survived this, if they truly endured, what kind of force would they become in the future? And for the first time in history, the Galactic Union realized something terrifying. The Dominion might have just made their greatest mistake, because they had not conquered humanity. They had awakened them. The war that shouldn't exist. The war was supposed to be over before it even began. For centuries, the Dominion had conquered countless worlds, wiping out any resistance with brutal efficiency. Their fleets were massive, their weapons unmatched. No species had ever withstood their might. And yet, here they were, the humans, a species that should have surrendered, a species that should have been crushed in days. But instead, they were fighting back. And they were winning battles they had no right to win. The Dominion's shock. High Overlord Kral of the Dominion fleet stood in the command chamber of the dread carrier Varkash. His crimson eyes narrowed at the holoscreen before him. The battle reports made no sense. The Dominion had sent 5 war fleets to Earth's solar system, more than enough to wipe out a primitive world. The calculations had been simple: bombard their military defenses, destroy their infrastructure, force surrender. But the humans had not surrendered. They had done the impossible. They had adapted. Their warships, though inferior in technology, used strategies unlike anything the Dominion had ever faced. Instead of predictable formations, they launched ambushes. Instead of fleeing, they charged straight into the fight. And worst of all, they fought to the last soldier. Other species would abandon their posts when defeat was certain. Other species would beg for mercy when surrounded. But the humans, even when outnumbered, even when their ships were burning, they kept fighting. Krell growled in frustration, his claws digging into the metal surface of his command table. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They are primitives. They should be broken by now." A Dominion war strategist, a pale-skinned Vorith, hesitated before answering. "Overlord, they do not fight like the others. They do not fight for survival. They fight for something else." Krall's eyes flashed. "What do you mean?" The strategist hesitated before playing the transmission. Once again, the human voice echoed through the chamber. "We do not break. We do not bow. We do not fear." Krall clenched his jaw. These were not just words. They were a declaration. And for the first time, in his long reign as a conqueror, Krall felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. The unstoppable resistance. On the battlefield, human soldiers fought like demons. The Dominion had expected them to crumble under orbital bombardments, but instead they dug in. They built underground bunkers. They set up traps. They turned every ruined city into a battlefield. They did not just fight with weapons. They fought with fire. A Dominion warlord named Zarketh led an assault on a human city called New London. His forces outnumbered the defenders 10-1. Victory was certain. Yet, as they pushed into the ruins, the humans struck back. They fought in the shadows, using the terrain to their advantage. Dominion troops fell one by one, caught in ambushes, taken out by snipers. Zarketh ordered orbital strikes, but the humans disappeared into tunnels, only to emerge behind his forces. Every step forward cost him thousands of warriors. And even when Dominion soldiers captured a human outpost, The defenders did not surrender. They detonated explosives, taking Dominion forces with them. It was madness. It was terrifying. No species had ever fought like this. The fear spreads. In the Galactic Union, the Council members watched the war unfold with growing unease. No species had ever resisted the Dominion like this before. The war should have ended weeks ago. Instead, it was escalating. Velrax, the Zorath strategist, analyzed the battle footage. He saw human soldiers fighting even when wounded, even when outnumbered. They refused to retreat. They refused to give up. And most disturbingly, they were getting better. Every battle they learned. Every loss they adapted. The Dominion's usual tactics were failing. Humanity was evolving in real time. Velrax turned to Supreme Chancellor Orvech. If the Dominion does not end this war soon, he hesitated. Orvech narrowed his eyes. Then what? Velrax took a deep breath. Then they will never be able to stop humanity. The breaking point. The Dominion High Command knew they had underestimated their enemy. But they were the Dominion. They could not accept defeat. So they made a terrible decision. They prepared to deploy the planet Cracker Bomb, a weapon designed to annihilate an entire planet if humanity refused to surrender. Then Earth itself would burn. But before they could launch the attack, they received another transmission, a single final warning. You think you can break us. You think destroying our world will end this war. You don't understand, do you? You cannot kill an idea. You cannot erase defiance. Even if you burn our world, we will rise from the ashes. And when we do, we will never stop coming for you. The Dominion hesitated. For the first time in history, the conquerors of the galaxy were afraid. Humanity's stand. The Dominion's War Council stood in stunned silence. The planet Cracker Bomb was ready. A single command, and Earth would cease to exist. And yet, they hesitated. The transmission still echoed in their minds. You think you can break us. You think destroying our world will end this war. You don't understand, do you? For the first time, the Dominion had encountered an enemy that was not afraid. An enemy that did not beg. An enemy that did not surrender. And now, the conquerors of the galaxy faced a terrifying possibility. What if humanity could not be defeated? The last warning. High Overlord Krell stood before the Dominion War Council, his fists clenched. His voice was calm, but his claws twitched with barely restrained rage. This war should have ended weeks ago, he growled. And yet these humans resist. They fight like no other species we have conquered. They fight without fear. And now, they dare to threaten us. The other warlords murmured in uneasy agreement. It is time to end this, Krall declared. Launch the planet Cracker. Erase their world. Let the galaxy know what happens to those who defy us. But before the order could be given, a Dominion strategist interrupted. Overlord, the strategist said cautiously, there is another transmission from the humans. Krall's eyes darkened. Play it. The transmission flickered to life. This time, the voice was different. It was not a warning. It was not a threat. It was a challenge. You want to destroy our world. Go ahead. But note this. We are already on our way to yours. The impossible attack. Krell froze. What? The strategist swallowed nervously. We have confirmed it, Overlord. Human forces have launched an assault on Dominion space. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the War Council. That's impossible, a warlord spat. Their fleets are weak. Their weapons are inferior. How could they? Because they are not fighting for victory. The strategist interrupted. They are fighting for revenge. The room fell silent. It was true. Every other species the Dominion had conquered had fought for survival. But the humans, they were fighting for something else. Their homeworld was under siege. Their people were dying. And instead of retreating, instead of surrendering, They had taken the fight to the Dominion, the Battle of Varkos Prime. The first Dominion world to fall was Varkos Prime. The planet had never seen war before. It had always been safe, deep within Dominion space, far from any conflict. But then the human fleet arrived. The Dominion expected a small, desperate force. Instead, they found something terrifying. Human ships moved unpredictably, faster than their size should allow. They did not fight like other fleets, following rigid formations. They adapted. Their capital ships launched boarding pods filled with soldiers. Dominion officers watched in horror as their own ships were taken from within. The human Marines fought like demons, storming through the halls of Dominion vessels, cutting down anything in their path. They did not take prisoners. They did not stop. They fought with a rage the Dominion had never seen before. And the worst part, they were winning. The unbreakable spirit. Velrax, the Zorath strategist from the Galactic Union, watched the battle unfold from a distant surveillance ship. His golden eyes were wide with something he had not felt in centuries. Awe. He turned to Supreme Chancellor Orvek. This should not be possible. And yet it is happening, Orvek murmured. Velrax clenched his jaw. The humans are not fighting to survive. They are fighting because they refuse to be conquered. He exhaled slowly. This war is no longer about Earth. This war is about humanity proving to the galaxy that they will never kneel. The tides turn. Across Dominion space, the impossible continued. More human fleets arrived. More Dominion worlds burned. The once mighty conquerors, feared by the galaxy for centuries, were now on the defensive. For the first time in history, the Dominion was being hunted. Krell stared at the hull screens in disbelief. His empire, his unstoppable war machine, was faltering. Because of one species that should have been crushed. One species that refused to die. The final message. As the Dominion scrambled to mount a defense, another human transmission arrived. Krell hesitated before playing it. The message was simple. It was not a threat. It was a promise. You wanted a war. Now you have one. Krell's claws dug into the metal surface of his throne. His breathing was heavy. He had never felt fear before. Until now. Because deep down, he knew the truth. This war would not end until one side was completely destroyed. And for the first time, Krell wondered, would it be the Dominion? The impossible battles. The Dominion was bleeding. For the first time in its long and brutal history, it was not the predator. It was the prey. And the worst part, the humans were just getting started. The counteroffensive begins. Across the galaxy, news spread like wildfire. Earth still stood. The species that was supposed to be wiped out in weeks had not only survived, but had pushed back. It was unthinkable. And yet, Dominion worlds were falling. One by one, their colonies, their strongholds, even their war factories were being attacked. The humans had no business winning these battles. Their fleets were outgunned. Their armies were outnumbered. Their technology was centuries behind. But they fought with something the Dominion couldn't understand. Something that made them more dangerous than any enemy they had ever faced. They fought with rage. They fought with purpose. And worst of all, they learned. The nightmare of Carthal Station. Dominion High Command believed Carthal Station was untouchable. It was a fortress world, built to withstand planet-killing weapons. Its orbital defenses were impenetrable. Its ground forces numbered in the millions. No species had ever dared attack it. Until now. A fleet of human warships emerged from slip space, battered but relentless. The Dominion commanders laughed. This was suicide. Then the battle began. And within hours, the laughter stopped. The humans fought like ghosts. They didn't follow conventional tactics. They'd rewrote the rules of war. Their ships didn't fight in formations. They struck in small, unpredictable waves. They didn't rely on brute force. They used precision. They jammed Dominion communications. They hacked their targeting systems. And before the Dominion could react, human soldiers were already on the ground. Carthel's surface turned into a slaughterhouse. Dominion troops fought with discipline, with strength, with overwhelming numbers. But humanity fought with something else. They fought with rage. They fought with vengeance. Every inch of ground was contested. Every street became a battlefield. Even when surrounded, even when outnumbered, human soldiers refused to break. And when the Dominion sent in their most elite warriors, their genetically enhanced Dread Guard, to crush the resistance, they never came back. Carthel Station, the unbreakable fortress, fell in 3 days. The Union watches in fear. In the heart of the Galactic Union, the Council members were no longer debating whether humanity would survive. They were now debating something far more terrifying. Would humanity stop? Velarax, the Zorath strategist, stood before the Council, his golden eyes unreadable. The Dominion underestimated them, he said. They assumed humanity would surrender. They assumed humanity would fight like every other species. He turned to Supreme Chancellor Orvek. They were wrong. Orvek leaned forward. How dangerous is humanity now? Velarax hesitated. This war has changed them. They have seen their home threatened. They have seen their people slaughtered. They have learned what it means to be prey. His voice darkened. And they have decided never to be prey again. Silence. The Council members shifted uncomfortably. Because if humanity could do this to the Dominion, what could they do to the rest of the galaxy? The blood price. The Dominion was in full retreat. Their mighty fleets, once unstoppable, were now scattered. Their armies, once feared, were now hunted. And for every Dominion world that burned, the same transmission played. You wanted a war. Now you have one. But humanity was paying a price too. For every victory, for every world they reclaimed, they lost more of themselves. Soldiers who had once fought for survival were now fighting for revenge. Leaders who had once defended Earth were now plotting invasions. And as the Dominion crumbled, the galaxy began to wonder. Was this war creating something even worse? Something unstoppable. Something that would never forgive and never forget. Because there was a saying among the human soldiers now. A saying whispered in every battlefield. A saying that sent shivers down the spine of every surviving Dominion commander. We are coming. And this time, humanity would not stop. The turning point. The Dominion was dying. Its war fleets, once unstoppable, were in shambles. Its proud armies, once unmatched, were in retreat. Its vast empire, once feared, was collapsing. And yet, the war was not over. Because humanity had not stopped. The hunt begins. The Dominion's leaders had made a fatal miscalculation. They had believed that if their forces fell back, if they surrendered a few key systems, humanity would slow down, that they would take their victories and return to Earth, that they would be satisfied. They were wrong. Human fleets no longer fought defensive battles. They were no longer protecting their worlds. They were hunting. System after system, Dominion strongholds burned. Not because they were strategic, not because they were necessary, but because they were Dominion. Human forces no longer fought for survival. Now, they fought for vengeance. The fall of Zarquan Prime. Zarquan Prime had been the jewel of the Dominion Empire. A world of towering cities, ancient palaces, and powerful warlords. It had never seen battle. It had never been touched by war. Until now. Human warships entered orbit, their weapons primed. The Dominion defenders sent a message. We surrender. The human fleet did not respond. The bombardment began anyway. For the first time in history, Dominion civilians were the ones running in terror. For the first time, they were the ones begging for mercy. And for the first time, none was given. By the time the dust settled, Zarquan Prime was gone. Its cities were ashes. Its leaders were dead. Its people were no more. And the galaxy watched in horror. Because now, it was no longer a war. It was a reckoning. The Union's dilemma. In the Galactic Union, the High Council had never been more divided. For centuries, the Dominion had been their greatest fear. For centuries, they had whispered of a day when its war fleets would come for them. That day would never come now, because the Dominion was finished, because humanity had killed it. And now, a new fear was rising, a question that no one dared ask aloud. What happens when the war is over? What happens when there is no Dominion left to fight? Will humanity stop? The Union had once feared the Dominion. Now, they feared something worse. A species that did not conquer for power. A species that did not fight for resources. A species that fought because they refused to forget. A species that fought because they refused to forgive. And if humanity could not forgive, what would stop them from turning their rage on the rest of the galaxy? The last stand. The Dominion had one final stronghold left. One last world where its leaders had retreated. One final place where they thought they could hide. It was called Drakkar 7, a fortress world, a final refuge, and it would be humanity's next target. Because the war was not over. Because humanity was not done. Because the message had been sent over and over again. Across battlefields, across star systems, across ruined worlds. We are coming. And this time, nothing would stand in their way. The message that changed everything. Drakkar 7 was the last Dominion stronghold. It was here that the remnants of their empire, their warlords, their strategists, their rulers, had fled, believing they could regroup, rebuild, and one day rise again. They were wrong, because humanity was coming. And this time, there would be no surrender. The final fleet, the largest human fleet ever assembled, emerged from slip space at the edge of the Drakkar system. It was a sight that sent terror through the Dominion forces, battle-scarred warships, their hulls still bearing the burns of previous victories. Experimental dreadnoughts, built from the wreckage of fallen enemies. Stealth cruisers, slipping through the void like ghosts, waiting to strike. This was not an army. This was an execution squad. And Drakkar 7 was about to be sentenced. The broadcast. Before the battle began, a final transmission was sent to the Dominion leadership. It was broadcast across all frequencies. Not just to Drakkar 7. Not just to the Dominion. But to the entire galaxy. Humanity wanted everyone to hear this. The screen flickered to life, revealing a single human figure, a war general clad in black, his expression like carved stone. And then he spoke. This ends today. No more running. No more hiding. No more Dominion. For centuries, you believed yourselves to be the masters of war. You believed that fear and destruction made you powerful. But we have shown you the truth. You are nothing. You are prey. And today, the hunt ends. Silence followed. Then the attack began. The Battle of Drakkar 7. The Dominion fought with everything they had left. But it didn't matter. The humans had become something else. They were no longer just soldiers. They were vengeance incarnate. Dominion warships were obliterated in precise, calculated strikes. Their planetary defenses were bypassed and dismantled in hours. Their cities, once thought untouchable, became graveyards. And on the surface, the last Dominion warlords made one final stand. They were slaughtered. Not a single one was spared. For every human that had been lost. For every world that had burned. For every family that had been shattered. The Dominion paid in blood. The aftermath. When the battle was over, the once great Dominion Empire was gone. Its fleets annihilated. Its leaders executed. Its homeworlds ashes. Humanity had done the impossible. They had ended an empire. But as the dust settled, the galaxy realized something far more terrifying. The war was over, but humanity was still here. And now everyone had the same question. What happens next? The second transmission. As the Galactic Union debated in fear, a second transmission was sent from the human fleet. It was not a threat. It was not a demand. It was a warning. To the galaxy, hear this. We did not seek this war. We did not ask for it. We did not want it. But we fought it, and we won. Now we have seen the truth of this galaxy. We have seen how the strong prey upon the weak. We have seen how warlords rise unchecked. We have seen how empires crumble under their own arrogance. We will not allow it again. If there is another dominion, if there is another empire that seeks conquest and war, then we will come. And we will end them. The transmission ended, and across the galaxy, a new fear was born. The unstoppable force. The Galactic Union had once feared the Dominion, but now they feared the ones who had destroyed them, because humanity had learned a terrible lesson, a lesson paid for in blood. In this galaxy, only the strong survived, and so humanity had become strong. The war was over, but humanity was just beginning. And as their fleets turned toward home, one message echoed across the stars. Never again. The legend begins. The war was over. The Dominion, once the most feared empire in the galaxy, was gone. Its fleets reduced to wreckage. Its rulers wiped from existence. Its legacy erased. And now, the galaxy stood at a crossroads, because something far greater, something far more unpredictable, had taken its place. Humanity. And no one knew what they would do next. The silence after the storm. For the first time in centuries, the stars were quiet. No Dominion war fleets loomed in the void. No planetary invasions threatened distant worlds. No desperate cries for help echoed across subspace. Instead, there was only one message. A single warning that had spread to every corner of the galaxy. Never again. It was not a promise. It was a law. A law written in the wreckage of warships. A law carved into the ruins of Dominion strongholds. A law that every species now understood. The Union's decision. In the heart of the Galactic Union, the High Council gathered in secret. For years, they had feared the Dominion's power. Now, they feared something else. Something far more dangerous. Because the Dominion had ruled through control, through oppression, through terror. But humanity did not want power. They did not seek to rule. They did not conquer. They eradicated threats. And that was far worse. The power of fear. There were whispers now, spoken only in hushed tones. Some feared that humanity would become the next Dominion, that their thirst for vengeance would never be satisfied, that they would march across the galaxy, striking down any who stood in their way. But others feared something even greater. That humanity would not seek dominion, that they would not seek power, that they would simply watch and wait for the next warlord, for the next conqueror, for the next threat to rise. And then, without warning, without hesitation, they would erase them. The birth of the unseen watchers. The name humanity became more than just a species. It became a force, a shadow that loomed over every empire, every fleet, every ruler who dared dream of conquest. The galaxy did not fear their armies. The galaxy did not fear their weapons. The galaxy feared their decision, because no one knew what would bring them back. No one knew what would make them march again. But everyone knew what would happen if they did. And so, for the first time in recorded history, the galaxy changed. Empires stepped back from war. Warlords held their ambitions in check. Conquerors became careful, because they all knew, somewhere out there, humanity was watching. The final transmission. No one ever heard from the human fleets again. They did not demand territory. They did not seek repayment. They did not ask for anything. They simply vanished. Their ships returned to Sol, their people to Earth. And before the last human fleet left Dominion space, they sent one final message. We are done. The war is over. But if you ever become what the Dominion was, if you ever bring war to those who cannot defend themselves, we will return, and this time there will be no warning. The message ended, and just like that, humanity was gone. The legend grows. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. The galaxy moved on. New alliances were formed. New wars began. But none of them were like before. Because the legend of humanity remained, it became a story told to children, a warning whispered in the halls of power, a fear buried deep in the hearts of those who sought conquest, because no one knew when they would return, or if they were already here, hidden in the shadows, watching. The final words. There was no monument to humanity's war, no grand statue, no carved history, just a single phrase written in the ruins of Dominion space, a warning, a promise, a law. Do not wake the sleeping giants, because if you do, there will be no one left to remember you.